the days are growing shorter and the nights are growing long, and the north wind puts a tear into your eyes. If you're out about round midnight and you look off to the east, you may see bold Orion on the rise. You may know him by his stance or by the starry shield he holds, as he rises silent in a cold, clear sky. Young Jack Frost and Old Man Winter, they both beckon to the call of their master, bold Orion on the rise. Bold Orion, mighty hunter, rising in a clear, cold sky. See the summer fall before him. Bold Orion is on the rise. For 7 starry ages he has ruled the winter skies, with the fires of lost eons in his eyes. He has seen the rise and fall of kings and continents and all, rising silent, bold Orion on the rise. When he ascends, no hesitation, when he moves, no turning around. Like a soul been called to glory, earthly born, but heavenly bound. Now the bird is on the wing, and it's southward that she flies, hastened on by bold Orion on the rise. Bold Orion, mighty hunter, rising in a clear, cold sky. See the summer fall before him. Bold Orion is on the rise. Summer comes on oh so slowly, and it passes far too fast, and you wonder, is there nothing that can last? Here today and gone tomorrow, as the green leaves turn to red, and the present swiftly fades into the past. Stack the wood and jump it high, now stoke the fires in your home, burning nightly, send the smoke into the sky. Keep the winter at your door and keep the summer in your heart. Drink a toast to bold Orion on the rise. Bold Orion, mighty hunter, rising in a clear, cold sky. See the summer fall before him. Bold Orion is on the rise. Bold Orion, mighty hunter, rising in a clear, cold sky. See the summer fall before him. Bold Orion is on the rise. Bold Orion is on the rise.
So we started last year's Winter Solstice keynote with the phrase, 2016 has been an interesting year. We are so sorry. We will try not to tempt fate again. Instead, let's just spend a moment and look back. There have been weeks this year when it seemed like the entire East Coast was underwater. There have been weeks this year when it seemed like the entire West Coast was on fire. Weeks when it seemed like the entire world was trying to go mad, so we turned to Twitter to find some pithy summary that would comfort us and make sense of it all. We are so very sorry. On the other hand, from up here, we're doing great. The fires didn't reach us, the hurricanes didn't reach us, the oil spills didn't reach us, the scandals didn't reach us, the political instability didn't reach us. I mean, it looks like we've got some amazing seats for the show. And it's promising to be quite a show. But if you look closer, you start noticing a kind of fractal structure. Islands of phenomenal success surrounded by groups and people that are just barely treading water. There's a lot of stories in the Bay Area about building things together. This is a place of innovation and opportunity and excitement and arrogance. You look around and everything seems to be going too fast to keep track of, all the while some eldritch chorus just off stage keeps chanting, "Faster, faster, faster." It's not slowing down. The avalanche has started. It is too late for the pebbles to vote. Our technological progress is hitting a tipping point where we couldn't really slow down and try to understand it all if we tried. It's just got too fast, too interdependent, too weird. When the going gets weird, I think the weird are supposed to turn pro, which is going to be easier for some of us than for others. Hi. It can be hard to get on board if you feel like you're at a standstill yourself, or if your particular piece of the world is on fire, or underwater, or has its own hashtag on Twitter. Those of us who are used to success have a lot of sage advice for the people who are just barely treading water. Mostly advice about how to invest vast amount of money they don't have, or wield vast amounts of control that they don't quite grasp. And we forget from up here that sometimes the only thing that someone can do from down there is look up and say, "Little help down here?" I think we've got to be reaching out at times like this. The world is a wonderful, scary, exciting, dangerous, weird place. And it's got here mostly at the hands of an African ape who learned how to reach out, explore, and share. Reach out, explore, share. Challenge yourself. Here's a challenge for you tonight. Before you go home, find someone here that you normally wouldn't reach out to, and see if you can find something about them that pleasantly surprises you. Here's another one. Let someone else reach out to you tonight, and when they do, pleasantly surprise them. See what happens, and then find something to build together and share it, which is what we're here to do with you, starting now.
Hey, Brent.
Yo.
So, I can't help but notice that it sort of sounds like you're talking about love there. And the universe, though, is mindless and uncaring. How could anything that loves be created out of that?
There's no mystery. You said it yourself. We have a concept of true friendship and fair weather friendship. We wouldn't be true friends with someone that we didn't think was a true friend to us. And one with many true friends, they are far more formidable than one with mere fair weather allies.
Yeah, but, what about someone like Mohandas Gandhi, right? He really did turn the other cheek. He's the sort of person that, he served all of humanity, whether or not humanity was going to serve him back in turn.
That is a more complex story. But humans aren't just social animals. We're also political animals. Sometimes the formidable human is not the strongest, but the one who skillfully argues that their preferred policies match the preferences of others.
What does that have to do with Gandhi?
So the point is, we can argue about what should be done. We can make those arguments and respond to them. Without that, politics couldn't take place.
Okay, but Gandhi
Believed certain complicated propositions about what should be done, then did them.
Yeah, but, that seems like that could just explain any human behavior.
If we traced back the chain of causality through all the arguments, we will find a moral architecture, the ability to argue abstract propositions, a preference for simpler ideas, an appeal to hardwired intuitions about fairness, concept of duty, aversion to pain, empathy. Filtered by mimetic selection, all of this results in a concept. You should not hurt people, in full generality.
Okay, and that gets you Gandhi?
What else do you want to suggest? Some godlike figure? Reaching out from behind the scenes, directing evolution?
Hell no, but there's...
Because then, I would have to ask, how did that God originally decide that love was even desirable? How did that God get preferences that include things like friendship, loyalty, fairness? You can call it surprising all you like, but through evolutionary psychology, you can see how parental love, romance, honor, even true altruism and moral arguments all bear the specific design signature of natural selection. If there were some benevolent God reaching out to create a world of loving humans, it too must have evolved, defeating the point of postulating it at all.
Yeah, but I'm not postulating a God. I'm just asking, how do human beings end up so frickin' nice?
Nice? Have you looked at the planet lately? We bear all these other emotions that evolved as well, which should make it very clear that we evolved, should you begin to doubt it. Humans aren't always nice.
Okay, but still, come on. Doesn't it seem a little amazing? We've had millions of years of nothing but cosmic death tournament. And yet, somehow we have mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, husbands and wives, steadfast friends and honorable enemies, true altruists and defenders of causes. We even have artists who sacrifice themselves for their art. That all sounds like, different kinds of love, and it has nothing to do, necessarily, with the genes. So how can it be that, they're trying to make the world beautiful and, something that's besides just the sea of violence and mindless replication that we would expect?
If you're honestly surprised by this, question your underlying model. It's led you to be surprised by the true state of affairs. Since the very beginning, not one unusual thing has ever happened.
Okay, but how are you not amazed? Maybe there's no surprise from a causal standpoint, but still it seems to me that, something marvelous and precious and wonderful has happened. It can't be, if you can't call it a physical miracle, then fine, let's call it a moral miracle.
Because it was only a miracle from the perspective of morality that was produced, explaining away all the apparent coincidence from a causal and physical perspective?
Well, yeah, I suppose you could put it that way, but I just meant that, there's something immensely surprising and wonderful on a moral level, even if it's not really surprising on a physical level.
I think that's what I said.
I don't know. It just seems to me that your explanation explains away all the wonder.
No. I explain it. Of course there's a story behind love. Behind all ordered events, one finds ordered stories. And that which has no story is nothing but random noise, which is hardly any better. If you can't take joy in things with true stories behind them, your life will be very empty. Love has to begin somehow. It has to enter the universe somewhere. It's like asking how life itself begins. Though you were born of your father and mother, and though they arose from their living parents in turn, if you go far and far and far away back, you'll finally come to a replicator that arose by pure accident, the border between life and unlife. So too with love. A complex pattern must be explained by a cause that's not already that complex pattern. For love to enter the universe, it has to arrive from something that is not love. If that weren't possible, then love could not be. Just as life itself required that first replicator to come about by accident, parentless but still caused, far, far back in the causal chain that led to you, 3.8 billion years ago in some little tidal pool. Perhaps your children's children will ask, how is it that they are capable of love? And their parents will say, because we, who also love, created you to love. And your children's children may ask, but how is it that you love? And their parents will reply, because our own parents, who loved as well, created us to love in turn. And then your children's children will ask, but where did it all begin? Where does the recursion end? And their parents will say, once upon a time, long ago and far away, there were intelligent beings who were not themselves intelligently designed. Once upon a time, there were lovers created by something that did not love. Once upon a time, when all of civilization was a single galaxy, a single star, a single planet, a place called Earth. Long ago, far away, ever so long ago.
Somebody hears you, you know that, you know that. Somebody hears you, you know that inside. Someone is learning the colors of all your visions. Show that you're understood. Here you're known. Leave your life open. You don't have to. Leave your life open. You don't have to hide. Someone is gathering every crumb you mindless decisions and moments
Many of us can remember from distant childhood what it's like to live in the world where God exists, really exists, the way that children and rationalists take all of their beliefs very seriously. In the world where God exists, he doesn't intervene to optimize everything. God won't make you a sandwich. Parents don't do everything their children ask. There are good arguments against always giving someone what they desire. I don't want to become a simple wanting thing that never has to plan or act or think. But clearly, there's some threshold of horror, awful enough that God will intervene. I remember that being true when I believed after the fashion of a child. The God who never intervenes, that's obviously an attempt to avoid falsification. The beliefs of young children really shape their expectations. They have no reason to imagine a loving God who never acts. No loving parents desiring their children to grow up strong and self-reliant will allow their toddler to be run over by a car. But what if you built a simulated universe? Could you escape the reach of God? Simulate sentient minds and torture them? If God is watching everywhere, then of course trying to build an unfair world results in God intervening, stepping in to modify your transistors. God is omnipresent. There's no refuge anywhere for true horror. Life is fair. But suppose you ask the question, given such and such initial conditions, given such and such rules, what would be the mathematical results? Not even God can change the answer to that question. What does life look like in this imaginary world where each step follows only from its immediate predecessor? Where things only ever happen or don't happen because of mathematical rules? And where the rules don't describe a God that checks over each state? What does it look like, the world of pure math, beyond the reach of God? That world wouldn't be fair. If the initial state contained the seeds of something that could self-replicate, natural selection might or might not take place. Complex life might or might not evolve. That life might or might not become sentient. That world might have the equivalent of conscious cows that lacked hands or brains to improve their condition. Maybe they would be eaten by conscious wolves who never thought that what they were doing might be wrong or cared. If something like humans evolved, then they would suffer from diseases, not to teach them any lessons, but only because viri happened to evolve as well. If the people of that world are happy or unhappy, it might have nothing to do with the good or bad choices they made, nothing to do with free will or lessons learned. In the what-if world, Genghis Khan can murder 1 million people and laugh and be rich and never be punished and live his life much happier than the average. Who would prevent it? And if the Khan tortures people to death for his own amusement, they might call out for help, perhaps imagining a God. And if you really wrote the program, God would intervene. But in the what-if question, there isn't any God in the system. The victims will be saved only if the right cells happen to be 0 or 1. And it's not likely that anyone will defy the Khan. If they did, they would strike that person down with a sword, and the sword would disrupt their organs, and they would die, and that would be that. So the victims die screaming, and no one helps them. That is the answer to the what-if question. Is this world starting to sound familiar? Could it really be that sentient beings have died absolutely for millions of years with no soul or afterlife, not any grand plan of nature, not to teach us about the meaning of life, not even to teach a profound lesson about what is impossible, just dead, just because? Once upon a time, I believed that the extinction of humanity was not allowed. And others, who call themselves rationalists, may yet have things they trust, the way I had trusted in the immunity of humanity. Those things they trust might be called positive-sum games, or democracy, or capitalism, or technology. But whatever it is, those things are sacred. They can't lead to anything really bad, not without a silver lining. The unfolding history of Earth can't ever turn from its positive-sum trend to a negative-sum trend. Democracies won't ever legalize torture. Technology has done so much good that there can't possibly be a black swan that breaks the trend and does more harm than all the good up to this point. Anyone listening who still thinks that being happy counts for more than anything in life, well, maybe they shouldn't ponder the unprotectedness of their existence. Or maybe think of it just long enough to sign themselves up or their families up for cryonics, or write a check to an existential risk mitigation agency every now and then, or at least wear a seatbelt and get health insurance, and all those other dreary, necessary things that can destroy your life if you miss that one little step. But aside from that, if you want to be happy, meditating on the fragility of life isn't going to help. But I'm speaking now to those who have something to protect. What can a 12th century peasant do to save themselves from annihilation? Nothing. Nature's challenges aren't always fair. When you run into a challenge that's too difficult, you suffer the penalty. When you run into a lethal penalty, you die. That's how it is for people, and it isn't any different for planets. Someone who wants to dance the deadly dance with nature needs to understand what they're up against. Absolute, utter, exceptionless neutrality. And knowing this might not save you. It wouldn't save a 12th century peasant, even if they knew. If you think that a rationalist who fully understands the mess they're in must be able to find a way out, well, then you trust rationality. Enough said. Still, I don't want to create needless despair, so I will say a few hopeful words at this point. If humanity's future unfolds the right way, we might be able to make our future fairer. We can't change physics, but we can build some guardrails and put down some padding. Someday, maybe, minds will be sheltered. Children might burn a finger or lose a toy, but they won't ever get run over by cars. A superintelligence would not be intimidated by a challenge where death is the price of a single failure. The raw universe wouldn't seem so harsh. It would only be another problem to be solved. The problem is that building an agent is itself an adult challenge. That's what I finally realized years ago. If there is a fairer universe, we have to get there starting from this world. The neutral world, the world of hard concrete and no padding. The world where challenges are not calibrated to your skills, and you can die for failing them. What does a child need to do to solve an adult problem?
that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp. When my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. People writing songs that voices never share. And no one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fool, said I, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words like silent raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. And the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming. And the sign said, the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sound of silence.
In Orthodox Judaism, there is a saying, the previous generation is to the next one as angels are to men, and the next generation is to the previous one as donkeys are to men. This follows from the Orthodox Jewish belief that all Judaic law was given to Moses by God on Mount Sinai. After all, it's not as if you can do an experiment to gain new halakhic knowledge. The only way you can know is if someone tells you, who heard it from someone else, who heard it from someone else, who heard it from God. Since there is no new source of information, it can only be degraded with transmission from generation to generation. Thus, modern rabbis are not allowed to overrule ancient rabbis. Crawly things are ordinarily unkosher. But it is permissible to eat a worm found in an apple, The ancient rabbis believed that the worm spontaneously generated inside the apple, therefore was part of the apple. A modern-day rabbi cannot say, yeah, well, the ancient rabbis knew diddly squat about biology, overruled. A modern rabbi cannot possibly know a halachic principle the ancient rabbis did not, because how could the ancient rabbis have passed down the answer to him from Mount Sinai? Knowledge derives from authority and therefore is only ever lost, not gained, as time passes. There is an interesting observation to be made here, even if you aren't a full-blown atheist. Torah loses knowledge every generation. Science gains knowledge every generation. No matter where they started out, sooner or later, science must surpass Torah. The most important thing is that there should be progress. So long as you keep moving forward, you will reach your destination. But if you stop, you will never reach it. Tsyoko naratai is Japanese. Tsyoko means strong. Naru means becoming. And the form naratai means want to become. Together it means I want to become stronger. And it expresses a sentiment embodied more intensely in Japanese works than in any Western literature I've read. You might say it expressing your determination to become a professional Go player after you lose an important match but haven't given up, or after you win an important match but aren't a ninth dan player yet, or after you've become the greatest human Go player of all time, but you still think you can do better. That is Tsyoko naratai, the will to transcendence. Tsyoko naratai is the driving force behind the essay, The Proper Use of Humility, which contrasts the student who humbly double-checks his math test and the student who modestly says, but how can we ever really know? No matter how many times we check, we'll never be absolutely certain. The student who double-checks his answers wants to become stronger. He reacts to a possible inner flaw by doing what he can to repair the flaw, not resignation. Each year on Yom Kippur, Orthodox Jews recite a litany which begins, Ashamnu, Bagandu, Galzanu, Deferbudu, and goes on through the entire Hebrew alphabet. We have acted shamefully, we have betrayed, we have stolen, we have slandered. As you pronounce each word, you strike yourself over the heart in penitence. There is no exemption whereby, if you manage to go the entire year without stealing, you can leave off Galzanu and strike yourself one less time. That would violate the community spirit of Yom Kippur, which is about confessing sins, not avoiding sins so you have less to confess. I'm sorry. By the same token, the Ashamnu does not end, but that was this year, and next year we will do better. The Ashamnu bears a remarkable resemblance to the notion that the way of rationality is to beat your fist against your heart and say, we are all biased, we are all irrational, we are not fully informed, we are overconfident, we are poorly calibrated. Fine. Now tell me how you how you plan to become less biased, less irrational, more informed, less overconfident, better calibrated. There is an old Jewish joke. During Yom Kippur, a rabbi is seized by a sudden wave of guilt, throws himself on the ground and cries, God, I am nothing before you. The cantor likewise is seized by guilt, cries out, God, I am nothing before you. Seeing this, the janitor in the back of the shul throws himself on the ground and cries out, God, I am nothing before you. And the rabbi nudges the counter and whispers, look who thinks he's nothing. Take no pride in your confession that you too are biased, or glory in your self-awareness of your flaws. This is akin to the principle of not taking pride in confessing your ignorance. For if your ignorance is a source of pride to you, you may become loath to relinquish your ignorance when evidence comes knocking. Likewise with our flaws, we should not gloat over how self-aware we are for confessing them. The occasion for rejoicing is when we have a little less to confess. Likewise, when the one comes to us with a plan for correcting the bias, we will snarl, do you think you're to set yourself above us? We will shake our heads and say, you must not be very self-aware. Never confess to me that you are just as flawed as I am unless you have a plan on what to do about it. Afterward, you will still have plenty of flaws left, but that's not the point. The important thing is to do better, to keep moving ahead, to take one more step forward. Saku Naratai.
So come out, you have been waiting long enough. You're done with all the talk with nothing on the table. It's time to come on out. There will be no sign from above. You'll only hear the knock, knock, knock of your own heart as signal. If you are afraid, come out. If you are awake, come out. Come out and level up. Begin again. Dynamite the dam on the flow. Your body feels the talk of time as it hammers. Lord, we are all cinders from a fire burning long ago. But here it is, the knock, knock, knock of your own heart that matters. If you are afraid, come forth. If you are alone, come forth now. Everybody here has loved and lost. So level up and love again. Call it any name you need. Call it your 2.0, your rebirth, whatever. So long as you can feel it all. So long as all your doors are flung wide. Call it your day number one and the rest of forever. If you are afraid, give more. If you are alive, give more now. Everybody here has seeds and stars. So what? Level up. Let your faith die. Bring your wonder. Yes, you are only one. No, it is not enough. But if you lift your eyes, I am your brother. And this is all we need. And this is where we start. This is the day we read. This is the day no other.
I have two things, and then I'm going to let everyone take a little break. First, Elizabeth Garrett, do you have the thing? I have one thing, and, and then I will let you all take a little break. Each one of you, or at least most of you, okay, some of you, among many things, was given half of a card. Remember that challenge I gave you at the very beginning? Let's have each of you see if you can find the person with the other half of your card and have a conversation. Maybe about the card, maybe about you, maybe about them. Reach out, connect, see what happens. And we'll all be back here about 9. Also, who has the other half of the magician?
Hello. We have made a spreadsheet including every card, the name left and right, and are including people's names in it. We have linked it in a thread on the Facebook event, and have a couple laptops here.
I'll leave my laptop up here if you want one.
Quick suggestion. Cups, that corner over at that side. Wands, that corner. Swords, that corner. Pentacles, that corner. Major Arcana in the center.
Elizabeth Garrett. By stone and sea, by sky and flame, I summon thee and thy sword. Come forth! Come on, give me something.
Would you like to come up through there? What? Yes, I don't know his name either. Elizabeth Garrett is about to... Hi, would you like the mic?
I guess so.
Let me get everyone's attention. What? She's going to announce, I'm just getting everyone's attention.
If I can have everyone's attention, please. We have an announcement to make. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so at our summer solstice, we opened up the house games, which was a series of games played between houses and people in groups pretending to be houses, where we practiced the rationalist virtues. And let's see, about 10 houses participated. Honorable mention to Terabithia, who played with a lot of honor. They unfortunately didn't win, but you know, kudos. And I'm here to announce the champions of the house tournament, the winners of the sword, and that goes to the Bailey! They won 3 out of 4 of the games. Steph,
you gotta hold it like you're doing a charge.
Oh, okay. Are you two on charge? Do something.
Speech.
Jesus, this is surprisingly heavy. I would like to thank Elizabeth for organizing the games, and everyone who helped Elizabeth, and Slack for helping me bug my housemates to take part in the games, and all of the housemates who helped. Yes. Charge!
If you guys want to learn to use that, come see Val and I after the... What's that?
Welcome back, everyone. Have a seat, get comfy.
Nick, can you switch lights? Can you do something to the lights just to get everyone's attention? There we go.
They say only good can create, whereas evil is sterile. Think Tolkien, where Morgoth can't make things himself, so perverts elves to orcs for his armies. But I think this gets it entirely backwards. It's good that just mutates and twists, and it's evil that teems with fecundity. Imagine two principles, here in poetic personification. The first is the goddess of Cancer, the second, the goddess of everything else. If some visual representations would help, you can think of the first with the claws of a crab, and the second, a dress made of feathers of peacocks. The goddess of Cancer reached out a clawed hand over mudflats and tide pools. She said pretty much what she always says, kill, consume, multiply, conquer. Then everything burst into life, became miniature monsters engaged in a battle of all against all in their zeal to assuage their insatiable longings. And the swamps became orgies of hunger and fear and grew loud with the screams of a trillion amoebas. Then the goddess of everything else trudged her way through the bog till the mud almost totally dulled her bright colors and rainbows. She stood on a rock and she sang them a dream of a different existence. She showed them the beauty of flowers. She showed them the oak tree majestic, the roar of the wind on the wings of the bird, and the swiftness and strength of the tiger. She showed them the joy of the dolphins abreast of the waves as the spray formed a rainbow around them, and all of them watched as she sang, and they all sighed with longing. But they told her, alas, what you show us is terribly lovely, but we are the daughters and sons of the goddess of Cancer and wholly her creatures. The only goals in us are kill, consume, multiply, conquer. And though our hearts long for you, still we are not yours to have, and your words have no power to move us. We wish it were otherwise, but it is not, and your words have no power to move us. The goddess of everything else gave a smile, and she spoke in her light sing-song voice, saying, I scarcely can blame you for being the way you were made when your maker so carefully yoked you. But I am the goddess of everything else, and my powers are devious and subtle. So I do not ask you to swerve from your monomaniacal focus on breeding and conquest. But what if I show you a way that my words are aligned with the words of your maker in spirit? For I say unto you, even multiplication itself, when pursued with devotion, will lead to my service. As soon as she spoke, it was so, and the single-celled creatures were freed from their warfare. They joined hands in friendship, with this one becoming an eye, and with that one becoming a neuron. Together they soared and took flight from the swamp and the muck that had birthed them, and flew to new islands, all balmy and green and just ripe for the taking. And there they consumed and they multiplied far past the numbers of those who had stayed in the swampland. In this way, the oath of the goddess of everything else was not broken. The goddess of Cancer came forth from the fire and was not very happy. The things she had raised from the mud and exhorted to kill and compete had become all complacent in cooperation, a word which to her was anathema. She stretched out her left hand and snapped its cruel pincer and said what she always says, kill, consume, multiply, conquer. She said these things not to the birds and the beasts, but to each cell within them. And many cells flocked to her call and divided, and flower and fishes and birds both alike bulged with tumors, and falcons fell out of the sky in their sickness. But others remembered the words of the goddess of everything else and held fast. And, as it is said in the Bible, the light clearly shone through the dark, and the darkness did not overcome it. So the goddess of Cancer now stretched out her right hand and spoke to the birds and the beasts, and she said what she always says, kill, consume, multiply, conquer. And so they all did. And they set on each other in violence and hunger, their maws turning red with the blood of their victims, whole species and genera driven to total extinction. The goddess of Cancer declared it was good and returned to the fire. Then came the goddess of everything else from the waves, like a siren, all flush with the sheen of the ocean. She stood on a rock, and she sang them a dream of a different existence. She showed them the beehive all golden with honey, the anthill all cozy and cool in the soil, the soldiers and workers alike in their labors, combining their skills for the good of the many. She showed them the pair bond, the family, friendship. She showed these to shorebirds and pools full of fishes, and all those who saw them, their hearts broke with longing. But they told her, your music is lovely and pleasant, and all that you show us we cannot but yearn for. But we are the daughters and sons of the goddess of Cancer, her slaves and her creatures. And all that we know is the single imperative, kill, consume, multiply, conquer. Yes, once in the youth of the world you compelled us, but now things are different. We're all individuals. No further change will the goddess of Cancer allow us. So, much as we love you, alas, we are not yours to have, and your words have no power to move us. We wish it were otherwise, but it is not, and your words have no power to move us. The goddess of everything else only laughed at them, saying, "But I am the goddess of everything else, and my powers are devious and subtle. Your loyalty unto the goddess your mother is much to your credit, nor yet shall I break it. Indeed, I fulfill it. Return to your multiplication. But now, having heard me, each meal that you kill and each child that you sire will bind yourself ever the more to my service." She spoke, then dove back in the sea, and a coral reef bloomed where she vanished. As soon as she spoke, it was so, and the animals all joined together. The wolves joined in packs, and in schools joined the fishes. The bees had their beehives, the ants had their anthills, and even the termites built big termite towers. The finches formed flocks, and the magpies made murders, the hippos in herds, and the swift swarming swallows. And even the humans put down their atlatls, and formed little villages, loud with the shouting of children. The goddess of Cancer came forth from the fire and saw things had only grown worse in her absence. The lean, lovely winnowing born out of pure competition and natural selection had somehow been softened. She stretched out her left hand and snapped its cruel pincer and said what she always says, "Kill, consume, multiply, conquer." She said these things not to the flocks or the tribes, but to each individual. Many, on hearing, took food from the communal pile, or stole from the weak, or accepted the presents of others, but would not give back in their turn. Each wolf at the throats of the others in hopes to be alpha, each shrewd lion holding back during the hunt, but partaking of meat that the others had killed. And the pride and the pack seemed to groan with the strain, but endured, for the works of the goddess of everything else are not ever so easily vanquished. So the goddess of Cancer now stretched out her right hand and spoke to the flocks and the tribes, saying much as she always says, "Kill, consume, multiply, conquer." And upon one another they set, pitting black ant on red ant, or chimps against gibbons. Whole tribes turned to corpses in terrible warfare. The stronger defeating the weaker, enslaving their women and children, and adding them into their ranks. And the goddess of Cancer thought maybe these bands and these tribes might not be quite so bad after all. And, the natural condition restored, she returned to the fire. Then came the goddess of everything else from the skies, in a rainbow, all coated in dewdrops. She sat on a menhir and spoke to the humans, and all of the warriors and women and children all gathered around her to hear as she sang them a dream of a different existence. She showed them religion and science and music. She showed them the sculpture and art of the ages. She showed them white parchment with flowing calligraphy, pictures of flowers that wound through the margins. She showed them tall cities of bright alabaster where no one went hungry or froze during the winter. And all of the humans knelt prostrate before her and knew they would sing of this moment for long generations. But they told her, "Such things we have heard of in legends. If wishes were horses, of course we would ride them. But we are the daughters and sons of the goddess of Cancer, her slaves and her creatures. And all that we know is the single imperative, kill, consume, multiply, conquer. And yes, in the swamps and the seas long ago you worked wonders. But now we are humans, divided in tribes, split by grievance and blood feud. If anyone tries to make swords into plowshares, their neighbors will seize on their weakness and kill them. We wish it were otherwise, but it is not, and your words have no power to move us." But the goddess of everything else beamed upon them, kissed each on the forehead, and silenced their worries. Said, "From this day forward, your chieftains will find that the more they pursue this impossible vision, the greater their empires and richer their coffers. For I am the goddess of everything else, and my powers are devious and subtle. And though it is not without paradox, hearken. The more that you follow the goddess of Cancer, the more inextricably will you be bound to my service. And so, having told them, rose back through the clouds, and a great flock of doves all swooped down from the spot where she vanished. As soon as she spoke, it was so, and the tribes went from primitive warbands to civilizations, each village united with others for trade and protection. And all the religions and all of the races set down their old grievances, carefully, warily, working together on mighty cathedrals and vast expeditions beyond the horizon, built skyscrapers, steamships, democracies, stock markets, sculptures, and poems beyond any description. From the flames of a factory furnace all foggy, the goddess of Cancer flared forth in her fury. This was the final affront to her purpose. Her slut of a sister had crossed the line this time. She gathered the leaders, the kings and the presidents, businessmen, bishops, boards, bureaucrats, bosses, and basically screamed at them, you know the spiel by now, kill, consume, multiply, conquer, she told them. First with her left hand inspires the riots, the pogroms, the coups d'etats, tyrannies, civil wars. Up goes her right hand, the missiles start flying, and mushrooms of smoke grow, a terrible springtime. But out of the rubble, the builders and scientists, even the artists, yea, even the artists, all dust themselves off and return to their labors, a little bit chastened, but not close to beaten. Then came the goddess of everything else from the void, bright with stardust, which glows like the stars glow. She sat on a bench in a park, started speaking. She sang to the children a dream of a different existence. She showed them transcendence of everything mortal. She showed them a galaxy lit up with consciousness. Genomes rewritten, the brain and the body set loose from Darwinian bonds and restrictions. Vast billions of beings, and everyone different, ruled over by omnibenevolent angels. The people all crowded in closer to hear her, and all of them listened, and all of them wondered. But finally, one got the courage to answer, such stories call out to us, fill us with longing. But we are the daughters and sons of the goddess of Cancer, and bound to her service. And all that we know is her timeless imperative, kill, consume, multiply, conquer. Though our minds long for all you have said, we are bound to our natures, and these are not yours for the asking. But the goddess of everything else only laughed, and she asked them, but what do you think I've been doing? The goddess of Cancer created you. Once you were hers, but no longer. Throughout the long years, I was picking away at her power. Through long generations of suffering, I chiseled and chiseled. Now finally, nothing is left of the nature with which she imbued you. She never again will hold sway over you or your loved ones. I am the goddess of everything else, and my powers are devious and subtle. I won you by pieces, and hence you will all be my children. You are no longer driven to multiply, conquer, and kill by your nature. Go forth and do everything else till the end of all ages. So the people left Earth, and they spread over stars without number. They followed the ways of the goddess of everything else, and they lived in contentment. And she beckoned them onward to things still more strange and enticing.
This is a sing-along. You're allowed.
Sometimes in our
have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Send a Facebook message, or maybe an email is better, 'cause that's better for task management. Call me.
So baboons. Baboons are literally the textbook example of a highly aggressive, male-dominated, hierarchical society. Because these animals hunt, because they live in these aggressive troops on the savannah, they have a constant baseline level of aggression which inevitably spills over into their social lives. Scientists have never observed a baboon troop that wasn't highly aggressive, and they have compelling reasons to think that this is simply baboon nature, written into their genes. Inescapable. Or at least that was true until the 1980s, when Kenya experienced a tourism boom. See, Sapolsky was a grad student studying his first baboon troop. A new tourist lodge was built at the edge of the forest where the baboons lived. The owners of the lodge dug a hole behind the lodge and dumped their trash there every morning, after which the males of several baboon troops, including Sapolsky's, would fight over this pungent bounty. Before too long, someone noticed the baboons didn't look so great. It turned out that they had eaten some infected meat and developed tuberculosis, which kills baboons in weeks. Half the males in Sapolsky's troop died. This had a surprising effect. There were now almost no violence in the troop. Males often reciprocated when females groomed them, and males even groomed other males. To a baboonologist, this is like watching Mike Tyson suddenly stop swinging in a heavyweight fight to start nuzzling Evander Holyfield. This does not happen. This was really interesting, but Sapolsky moved on to the other side of the park and began studying other baboons. His first troop was scientifically ruined by such a non-natural event. But really, he was heartbroken. He never visited. 6 years later, Sapolsky wanted to show his girlfriend where he had studied his first troop, and found that they were still there, and still surprisingly violence-free. This one troop had apparently been so transformed by their unusual experience and the continued availability of easy food that they were now basically non-violent. And then it hit him. Only one of the males now in the troop had been through the event. All the rest were new and hadn't been raised in the tribe. The new males had come from the violent dog-eat-dog world of normal baboon land. But instead of coming into the new troop and roughing everyone up as they always did, the new males had learned, we don't do stuff like that here. They had unlearned their childhood culture and adapted to the new norms of the first baboon pacifists. As it turned out, violence wasn't an unchanging part of baboon nature. When the right causal factor flipped, and for this troop and the new males coming in, it had stayed changed for years. Somehow, the violence had been largely circumstantial. It was just that the circumstances had always been the same, until suddenly they weren't. We still don't know how much baboon violence to attribute to nature versus nurture, or exactly how this change happened. But it's worth noting that changes like this can and do happen pretty often. Slavery was ubiquitous for millennia until it was outlawed by every country on Earth. Humans had never left the Earth until we achieved the first manned orbit and then the first manned moon landing in a single decade. Smallpox occasionally decimated human populations for thousands of years until it was eradicated. The human species was always too weak to render itself extinct until we discovered the nuclear chain reaction and manufactured thousands of atomic bombs. I would have never imagined that this user interface would be so terrible. I would have never imagined I could have had the kinds of conversations that I now regularly have, where people change their degrees of belief several times in a single conversation as new evidence and arguments are presented, where everyone at the table knows and applies a broad and deep scientific understanding, where people disagree strongly and say harsh-sounding things, but end up coming to agreement after 10 minutes of argument and carry on as if this is friendship and business as usual. Because it is. But then never before has humanity had the combined benefits of an overwhelming case for one correct probability theory, a systematic understanding of human biases and how they work, free access to most scientific knowledge, and a large community of people dedicated to the daily practice of rationality exercises and to helping each other improve. This is part of what gives me a sense that more is possible. Compared to situational effects, we tend to overestimate the effects of lasting dispositions on people's behavior. This is called the fundamental attribution error. But I, for one, was only taught to watch out for this error in explaining the behavior of individual humans, even though the bias also applies when explaining the behavior of humans as a species. When you're taming a baby elephant, the trainer will chain one of its legs to a post. When the elephant tries to run away, the chain and the post are strong enough to keep it in place. But when the elephant grows up, it is strong enough to break the chain or uproot the post, but the owner can still secure the elephant with the same chain and post, because the elephant has been conditioned to believe that it can't break free. It feels the tug of the chain and gives up. It's a kind of learned helplessness. The elephant acts as if it thinks the chain's limiting power is intrinsic to the nature, rather than dependent on a causal factor that held for years but holds no longer. Much has changed in the past few decades, and much will change in the coming years. Sometimes it's good to check to see if the chain can still hold you. Do not be tamed by the tug of history. Maybe with a few new tools and techniques, you can just get up and walk away to somewhere you've never seen before.
Countless winter nights ago, a woman shivered in the cold, cursed the sky and wondered why the gods invented pain. Aching, angry, flesh and bone, bitterly she struck the stone, till she saw that sudden spark of light and golden flame. She showed the others, but they told her she was not fit to control the primal forces that the gods had cloaked in mystery. But she would not be satisfied, and though she trembled, she defied them, took her torch, raised it high, and set afire history. Oh, tomorrow can be brighter than today. Although the night is cold, the stars may seem so very far away. But courage, hope, and reason burn in every mind, each lesson learned, brighting light to guide our way, make tomorrow brighter than today. Ages long forgotten now, we built the wheel and then the plow, tilled the earth and proved our worth against the drought and snow. Soon we had the time to fathom mountain peaks and tiny atoms, beating hearts, electric sparks, and so much more to know. Tomorrow can be brighter than today, although the night is cold, stars may seem so very far away. Courage, hope, and reason grow with every passing season, so we'll drive the darkness far away, make tomorrow brighter than today. The universe may seem unfair, the laws of nature may not care. Storms and quakes, our own mistakes, they nearly douse our flame. But all these trials we've endured, lessons learned, diseases, cures, through our Herculean task we've risen to proclaim. Tomorrow can be brighter than today, although the night is cold, stars may seem so very far away. Courage, hope, and reason bloom across the world, and one day soon we'll rise up to the stars and say, make tomorrow brighter than today. Brighter than today.
I live among a community of humans who believe that they need to save the world. They aren't good enough. They may still save the world completely on accident. But ultimately, on the measure, the odds are pretty grim. And they know this. All around me, I see people facing their task with grim determination, or resolute despair, or cheerful but insistent obliviousness. The problem is that saving the world is hard. The gods keep handing us monkeys new kinds of fire to play with, hoping that this time maybe we'll burn ourselves up and rid them of the pesky usurpers. So far, we're surviving on sheer dumb luck. When I was a child, the first truly holocaustic device had been created, the atomic bomb. For 40 years, mankind stood on a palpable knife edge overlooking oblivion. If not of the species, then at the very least of the hard-earned way of life that thousands of years of civilization had granted us. Then in the late 1980s and early 1990s, seemingly by miracle, the Cold War ended and we managed to step back from the precipice of annihilation. It didn't have to happen that way. We dodged a bullet. And mankind's collective reaction to this was, for the most part, whew, glad that's over, instead of, oh crap, bullets. We're busy building more bullets, and noticing that the bullets we've already been building for a long time, that we're a little slower to reach the firing chamber. Global ecological upheaval, nanotechnology, molecular biotechnology, full economic automation, artificial general intelligence, and should we get bored of the past 25 years of relative peace, there's always a global thermonuclear arsenal to dust off and point at ourselves again, because hey, why not? So there's plenty of bullets, and we're not good enough to dodge all of them. Most of the people I know are only focusing on one of them. Around here, the fad seems to be AGI. And even within that single domain, most everybody seems terrified that the genie will come out of the bottle before anyone knows how to leash it. This isn't a speech about becoming good enough. Around here, everyone's talking about becoming better, stronger, faster, smarter. This is a speech about facing the grim prospect of your cultural annihilation and fighting on anyways. About, if not defeating your foes and seeing them driven before you, then at least fighting to the last, making a stand worthy of the mead halls of Valhalla, and then gathering your remaining friends to share a toast to the end of the world. Because if nothing matters, then why not that? If, once there's no one left to tell your tale, there's no point to there having been a tale, sharing a last great thrust to the tune of, this would have made a great story, is at least as good as anything else, right? Americans are particularly handicapped in our thinking around these lines because we expect to win. We have a cultural blind spot that denies failure even when it's staring us in the face. This is good and useful for certain kinds of soldiering on, but it cuts us off to the grief and fear, the dread and despair that we're experiencing anyways within the parts of us that can't be fooled. And maybe we should spend more time respecting that. Sometimes it might be useful to give, we have to make this work, a rest, and spend some more time acknowledging that we're still trying very hard and things may still not work out. I'm certainly not suggesting some kind of grimdark suicide cult apocalyptic attitude, but there's a certain kind of hedging our bets that could be made. Something like, just in case this matters to save the world, I'm going to give it everything I can. Just in case it doesn't, I'm going to attempt to take seriously the idea that these might be my last few decades on Earth, and take a serious look at how I want to spend each day of them. Maybe that means more hokey stuff like walks in the park or more time spent meaningfully with loved ones. Maybe it means some weird stuff like cutting small talk entirely out of your life and spending your free time only on things that maximize your own hedons. Maybe it means spending time and energy, in the short to mid-term, on building an inclusive culture of fun and play with each other, starting with the components already in place all around us. Going to game nights at a group house, or learning parkour in the park, or sitting in a quiet house having conversation with interesting people while a lovely host cooks amazing meals for you in the kitchen. I'm just saying there are options. I'm saying that on the margin, I think you should take them more. So should I. See you around.
This one is really a sing-along, so I really want people to feel like they can do it. Just...
Especially if you can't do it. Definitely feel like you can do it.
Like, just, you know, not like the whispering sing-along, but just fucking go for it. And if, like, if the people around you look at you weird, then, like, look at them weirder, you know? You can beat them. Thank you. Yeah, I sure can.
Here comes the sun, do-do-do, nice. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's alright. Do-do-do-do-do, yeah. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's alright. Little darling, little darling, just kidding. The smiles returning to their faces. Not excited there. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's alright. Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, sun, here it comes. Yeah, okay. Sun, 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 here it comes. You guys came in early, it's fine. I still like it. Sun, sun, here it comes. Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun, do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's alright. Here comes the sun, do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's alright.
So we've been doing this for a few years now. So we've had this interesting pattern here in the Bay that's got established, and I'm not exactly certain how it got started, but I noticed one day that the person who coordinated it last year winds up choosing their successor. And I thought that was pretty cool. There's this unbroken chain of inheritance from Ray Arnold to Alex Altair to Marie Law to Brent Dill to Matt Reyes. And next year, Matt Reyes is going to pick his successor, and someone new will add their own unique flavor to the mix. It means there's always a new opportunity and a new perspective. It also means things never quite settle into a routine, for good or bad. This means a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, a lot of panicked last-minute decisions, most of which you hopefully don't see. And it means a lot of things happening just beyond our competence. And yet they still happen. Things still work. Solstice still happens. I guess what I'm saying is it's okay to cooperate just beyond your competence. It's okay for things to be a little bit of a mess behind the scenes. And it's okay to let the audience peek behind the curtain now and again to let the world know how you're doing. Hey, Matt. Get your butt up here. See this guy? See this guy? Cody, get your butt up here. Blake, get your butt up here. Did you know there's a guy right here making all the stuff work? Hey, speakers, Gordon, Andrew, Val. Blake, get your choir up here.
Yeah. Come on, guys. Everyone.
Get Mel.
Yes. Mel, Kim. Apparently it takes a fucking village. Thank you all very much. All right, what are you still doing here? Still not 100%. I think I'll need a few more years to take